know what it is. Kakank. You know the routine. Kakank. Guys, welcome back. You know what it is. You're soaking in it. Welcome back to Pencil, not Pencil, 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 T.O. Pencil. Your favorite Wednesday night, 8 p.m. EST. Pinch Me, I Must Be Dreaming, Mike Manley. Live cast where you get to hang out with expert real life cartoonists in the flesh and find out what's going on in their world and how they make the sausage. Pause. Welcome, you guys. My name is JAMAR Nicholas. I am a cartoonist of good standing, third vice president of the National Cartoonist Society, Philadelphia chapter chair of the Philadelphia National Cartoonist Society chapter, and also your best friend. Leon the Extraordinary is the series that I do at Scholastic under the graphics imprint. Leon is in stores now. Coming next year, summer 2024, is Leon Worst Friends Forever, the next book in the series. Pre-order it now, why don't you? If you may notice that we're one man down, but what do they say? One monkey don't stop no show, Mike Manley. Not to say that Steve Conley is a monkey. He's one of my best buds. So I'm going to remiss him. We both remiss him. But I'm going to jump right into introducing Mike. I can't do Steve's thing. He is the man of the the man of the hour, Tower Power, too sweet to be sour, and the Kirby crackle to the snap and pop of myself and Steve Conley. Your friend of mine, Mike Manley. Hello, Mike Manley.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
Sorry, I will probably be a little, maybe a little underwhelming this week since I'm pretty sure I got COVID for my birthday. So.
Oh yeah, Mike, your birthday is like super soon.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, it's tomorrow. That's the gift that keeps giving, I hear.
Yep.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Mike. How are you feeling?
Better, but not great.
Guys, everybody put your healing Kirby hands on the screen, and please bless our brother Mike Manley. That's right. Put that gamma on him.
Gamma radiation.
Yeah, Tony says, sorry to hear that. Yeah, man, we're going to get through this. Jamal says, best of health to you and happy birthday. Happy, as I say on Facebook, happy born date, Mike Manley. So yeah, I might do a lot of the lifting tonight, but I like to run my mouth, so that's part of the course. And Mike, Jamal did it first, but I'll be the first to say happy birthday. Everybody knows Mike and I are thick as thieves, and all the love in the world to my buddy Mike.
Why? Thank you.
So speaking of that, before we went on air, I asked Mike how he felt about talking about COVID, because that's super raw and it's like you're in it right now. And he said that was okay. And the theme of tonight, if you guys are paying attention to what we're doing here, we're still going along the path of the modern cartoonist. What does it take to make it through this career in our Al Gore's internet to 2023? There's a lot of challenges, a lot of changes. I like to joke with Mike about needing a facsimile machine when he was in the business earlier, which doesn't even exist anymore. But a big part of what's going on these days is you can see it yourself. For a long time, we would even be on platforms like this saying, "Hey, you need an Instagram account. That's where all the people are." I remember you saying that, Mike, yourself. The Instagram is crucial to your output in your profile as a cartoonist. That's shifting. Everybody's talking about the algorithms. We're not even talking about AI. We're not even touching on that tonight. Pause. But it's really interesting to discuss maybe what the new modern makeup of running a studio or running a freelance career looks like. So maybe we'll just start there. And the title of this is called The Road Warrior. I want to talk a lot about travel and how that fits into your deal in 2023. So Mike, maybe you want to talk about how what the last couple of years have been like for you, and even at the beginning of your career, how was travel? That was a big part of your early career, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would do conventions, but since COVID, I haven't done any conventions, uh,
Hmm.
and I don't. So far, I don't plan to return to doing conventions.
Hmm.
I have a couple invitations for next year, but I would really have to judge whether I would do that at the time. You
Hmm.
know, um, I think you're 100% right. I think so many things are changing.
Hmm.
Uh, the algorithms, the what the social media companies are doing, and what and why they're doing it. And I think you have to sort of ascertain for yourself whether something works for you. Like there was just the New York Comic Con. That's a big profit for
Hmm.
profit convention. Uh, it's very difficult to do. It's sometimes even very difficult to get in.
Hmm.
Um, and then it's very expensive,
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about that.
right? So, bottom line is, if you're going to get an artist alley table, well, artist alley is always at the worst end of the dog. So you have to decide: is it worth going to that show, and how hard do you have to work at that show to be able to make back your money, right?
Hmm.
Not even breaking even, right? Just break even, not even turning a profit. And so I think that I see a lot of people talking about conventions now. There certainly are a lot of conventions, but I think you really have to decide, uh, get to know who your audience is.
Hmm.
Who are Jamar Nicholas's fans? Who are
That's a
Mike?
great question.
Right? Who are your fans? I know who my fans are. My fans are usually people from about 40 up until about 60,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then I realize, because I was talking to somebody about this, that I'm not interested in doing TikTok. I'm not interested in doing 15-second clips of me like inking a nose or something like that. That doesn't interest me. And I don't think any teenagers would be interested in what I'm doing because they want to do, manga or whatever the current
Hmm.
hot thing is. And that's not what I want to do, right?
Hmm.
That's not what I'm interested in. And so you can like run around and spend all this time and money and trying to figure out, I bought these ads, nothing, I'm not getting any.
Right.
It used to be when I would buy an ad, it would really boost my.
Hmm.
Now you buy an ad, nope.
You just lost money on your
You
visa.
just
Is all.
lost, you just lost money, you know.
Hmm.
I was talking to a friend who was even saying they're even changing the way they work with hashtags.
Hmm.
So too many hashtags,
Right.
so you don't put as many hashtags, but you put in the body copy the word, Daredevil or Batman or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's where we're sort of where we are, and everything is really changing now.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's just, like I said, it's very expensive. The last time I did a show, a New York show, was probably 10 years ago.
Yeah. I recall that, and even that's changed. I mean, the maybe even the algorithm of how a comic book convention works has changed. And as we get along this road of conversation, we're going to take a couple of exits and some rest stops along the way. And I'm also being very sensitive to Mike's condition, and I want to make sure Mike's feeling good tonight. So, one thing I was thinking about is, and if you know me or follow me on any of the socials, I don't say a lot. I'll post stuff. I'll do some really, some thoughtful things for people, and da da da. But I don't get caught up in things. That's very measured. But one thing I see a lot of is, and I think this is all going to add up. I see a lot of people publicly. I'm talking about cartoonists publicly dunk on comic book conventions for whatever slight they feel has been handed to them. Yo, screw XYZ. They didn't give me a pro badge. Or later for them, they didn't let my mama in, or whatever. Knowing, and I think that's really kind of foolish to a degree, because whatever happened this year is going to, kind of come back and bite you the next year, and people are paying attention. So,
Well, I do think that one of the complaints that I see very often is that, I mean, it happened to me
sure,
when it was the last Philly show I tried to go to.
they didn't give you a badge.
They wouldn't give me a badge.
Yeah. Hmm.
They wouldn't give me a badge. So I just think, the whole profit thing has changed
Yeah.
quite a bit. And what you're really seeing is, I think, the separation of what was traditionally thought of as fandom separating out. So you have like the cosplay people, and the people want to see the actors, and then a shrinking amount of people who want to see the direct market stuff. And only a few people who are working in that stuff, probably like, John Romita, people like that. Those people, if they're on Spider-Man, probably get some play. But that's not your audience for Leon.
Right. Right. So, well, with that, and kind of what I was touching on is, I think it's a little bit of a two-part. I kind of feel like it's maybe karma, not karma, but there's something at play if not you, the royal you, your output on social media is griping about when you don't get stuff, and then you don't get more stuff. You know what I'm saying? Is I think there's a reputation that people build for themselves if they're, I think they're just venting, but people are watching that stuff. But I also say the second part of that is that, and we touched on this in one of our earlier episodes about con prep, is that especially with there being so many shows these days, you have to be really particular about what you're going to. So the days of, oh, well, I'm going to get on a thing and just go to this thing because it's that time of year and I love going to SPX, let's say. No knock on SPX. That was my first show, my first love, my first childhood crush was SPX. But there's a point where I don't need to go to SPX anymore. And with that, I'm separating myself and not saying there's something wrong with the show. It doesn't fit what I'm doing now. And I think part of your matrix or makeup is that you have to be really decisive about where you're pointing your rudder.
Where are you investing you're investing your time? The other thing I know from talking to my younger friends is that it's hard to get in those shows. It's hard to get in a lot of shows, and you get waitlisted. You never used to get waitlisted going to a comic book, but now there's so many artists now compared to like 20 years ago.
And I think that's just it, Mike. That answers the same question. Let's just say, because I want to like lean on this for some reason, because I hear it all the time and it makes me grit my teeth. New York City is full of professional artists. So when the circus comes to town, I think, and all praises due, of course they should have a pro badge, but there's more pros than there are badges, right? So whose job is that to figure out who gets one and who doesn't? Because everybody feels like I worked on Mad Magazine and I did this and I created the Ghostbusters logo. Of course, I should get a pro badge. So my whole thing with that is that I think you have to really separate the ego from you getting some sort of badge for a show, as I just don't think there's enough to go around.
Well, the other thing though is they used us to build up their popularity.
Well, that's very true too. My hitting the ball back across the net on that is that I also said, and we've talked about this before, I think administratively wise, if that's a phrase, because I come from that world of planning things, and even JRD talked about event planning. You have no idea who has that database or who's collecting that information from the applications.
And does that person know anything? Do they know anything about it? Are they just some kid who doesn't know?
Who knows? It could be
Right.
it could be a temp. It could be somebody's girlfriend. You know what I mean? Who knows who's got?
That person's not back next year.
Yeah, who knows? So I think with just that in the back of your head, I would think it makes more sense to kind of take your foot off the gas with how you react to not getting something. I think it's just not a good look.
Well,
I just want to put that out there.
It is frustrating.
Yeah, it is.
It is frustrating. But again, I getting a fair amount of commissions, which is all profit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I go to New York, it's probably going to cost me $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
I got to draw a lot of commissions to get $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
And what I came to realize is that art collectors don't go to buy art at those shows for the most part. They go on Heritage, they go on, that's at least that's what's working for me. So
Mm-hmm.
if I go, well, I'm going to spend $3,000 going to New York, and I'm going to, take 4 or 5 days all told. Well, really, is it worth my time in? I love seeing my friends. That's the thing I like the most.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But all comic conventions, after a while, and I've been going to comic book conventions since I was like 14 years old.
Yeah.
They're all kind of the same.
Mm-hmm.
There's a boonch, boonch, boonch thing over here, and a boonch, boonch, boonch thing over there. Someone's always asking you, do you know where Jim Lee is? People are,
Mm-hmm.
So I like the smaller shows like Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
I did Heroes years ago. That was nice.
Mm-hmm.
But now I have to, again, consider the fact that if I go to a show, even if I'm masked, and most of the other people are not masked, I've had COVID for 5 days, 6 days. I don't want to have to keep doing that over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things, you can spend a lot of time chasing each new platform, chasing I'm going to make reels. Then I'm going to make this. Then I'm going to make that. And you're going to be doing all these other things. Does that actually really return anything for you?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Does that benefit you in sales or raising your
like your profile?
right? And I think I've been posting a lot of, I think, interesting stuff on Facebook in the last month or two.
Hmm.
And people really seem to enjoy it. I did the thing on rates and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think you get more out of that.
Just engagement
Engagement
with
and
an
having a
audience,
discussion, yes.
right? Like discourse,
Right,
rather than funny dances.
right,
Hmm.
right.
And also to be fair to let's say creative people who use TikTok, or there's things like Book Talk, if you've heard of that, who are really pushing their stuff through these different platforms. It's not to say that they're doing silly dances, but they're using that as, their rudder in the water, and I think it may work for them. There's millions of people who watch TikTok, and if you can figure out a way to make it work for you, I think it's great. I think if you're just doing it just to do it and there's no direction to it, I think that's an easy way to spin out of control. But again, to your point, is like, is that helping your brand? Is that helping you move forward? I think.
Is it helping you get work? Is it helping get like meaningful engagement to where someone would want to purchase something that you're doing?
Mhm, right. Um, I'm kind of reading the chat and talking at the same time. Um, so Deep Red, what up, Deep Red? Deep Red Gibson says, "Have you ever made a connection at a convention that's led to a job?" And I'll speak for Mike for a minute. That's a lot how a lot of you guys got work in the like later in the '90s and stuff, right? Like you would hook up with editors and things.
Well,
That's beyond the era of going into the offices, right?
usually every time I went to a big show, I got work.
Right,
But now they don't send editors to the shows. They don't have a booth like they used to
right,
anymore.
right.
Um, so you probably are not going to get work for Marvel and DC doing that. I mean, that whole thing is very different now.
Hmm.
They used to have a huge staff with DC, and they had a big booth, and Marvel did, and but you don't have that anymore.
Hmm.
So I don't know whether people. I mean, I haven't. The last job I got was a job with Marie Javins, Justice League International, and that's what 2015, something like that.
Hmm.
Pretty long ago now.
Hmm. So I mean that. So going back to the origin or the original part of our topic tonight was, what does traveling do for your career? And there's I guess a pro con for back in the day. You would have to go visit some shows so you can get in an eye line of editors and maybe get some new gigs. Or there was even an interview when we had Art and Franco on a couple of years ago on the podcast. Art Franco said very plainly, like going to San Diego every year was part of their calendar for the next year of work because they lined up gigs at
Right.
Baltimore. I mean, I'm sorry, at San Diego every year. I don't know if that's still the case, or luckily a bunch of our guys are so busy they don't have time to add more stuff to the plate. But that was definitely a makeup. So maybe one thing I want to touch on quickly is, and I try to always come from the idea of the layman or somebody who's just starting or trying to figure it out on the road, or trying to build a plane while you're flying it, is if you're starting out or you've been in the mix for a couple of years and you're still at that point where you think you have to do all of it, right? Because you just don't know. It's like, should I go to San Diego? They said San Diego is the thing I got to be at. Should I go? And Mike, what you touched on about money, cost is a giant part of it. When I was younger, I was full of piss and vinegar, and I would just go to things and worry about the money later. I would roll a lot of dice, but I was also savvy enough to not just go up there without a plan. But that's also a stressor. If you don't really have the coin or the plan in place before you get on an airplane and go someplace and you land and you haven't figured out where you're staying, you don't figure out how you're getting home. and you're hoping that you sell everything on your table so you make table back or make room, then maybe you shouldn't go that year. We both know some people back in the day, I'm not throwing names around, of people who would show up at a con and then ask if they could crash on in your hotel room because they didn't have a place to stay. That sounds real sexy when you're in your 20s, but when you're 50, I'm not letting you in. Yeah, I'm saying you should have figured that out, bro. But you know what I'm saying? Like there's I guess it's a bit of a FOMO. You know, the world is telling you these are things that you need to do for you to be considered legit, or this is part of your, I guess, your cartooning starter pack that you're supposed to go do. But if you can't do it, there's nothing wrong with that.
I
Somebody,
also think that's all, like I said, I think that's all changing radically now, because the direct market is not at all what it was, 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And when I went to San Diego, when I was working on the shows, it was an opportunity for me to meet people or
Yeah.
even go to the studio and meet people I worked with.
Hmm.
So that was like two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
I went 3 years ago.
Hmm. To what show, Mike? Was that was
San
that
Diego.
okay? I thought you were talking about that illustration con, but go ahead.
So I went to that and I saw the people at Dark Horse who I was just doing a project with. I saw friends,
Hmm.
but it had also changed quite a bit.
Right.
And
Uh,
there's more people in the room interested in other stuff than what I do.
mhm, mhm. Right. And that's part of you having to have a really solid idea of why you're going, right? So the why can't be because it's a comic convention. That's not good enough. Are your people there, whatever that means? Are there opportunities there for you? Sometimes it's good if you've been in a rut of doing the same show over and over again. Sometimes it's good to go to something else just to see, maybe you just need to mix it up a little bit. I've been in places where people were so used to seeing me every year, they could wind their watch by it. But then I wasn't there the next year, and they're like, oh, and like you break that spell a little bit because I need to be somewhere else this time. So you really have to be in charge of where your career is going at all times. Um, yeah, what up, P Wedge? Patrick says if you don't go into a convention with a plan, you're chasing money and anxiety all weekend. Not fun. Um, and it may sound like I'm telling people not to go to cons. That's total not where I'm going with this. But again, what like P is saying, you have to have a plan. Are you going to a show to get work? Are you going to a show to promote your
Who's going to be at that show that could
right,
give you work?
right. Are the people that you're looking for going to be there? Are you just going to, hope you're peeing next to somebody in the bathroom that's going to be, get you get you a gig? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Uh, that's a part of it. Another and a lot of this also adds up to where you are in your career too. Kind of speaking about because the chat's talking a lot about people getting work at conventions. And I know we both know, and Mike, if you were going to shows right now, you'd be doing it too. There's a lot of cats who that's all they're doing all weekend is they have their head down drawing, doing commissions. To me, I
Going
know
back to your hotel room at night to
to
finish.
man, bless all of you guys. I can't do it. I've done it. I hated it. I don't even tell people I do commissions anymore. It shows I mean, the money's always nice, but it's anxiety, like Patrick was saying. I would rather sell whatever's on my table and maybe not bring my markers. If someone asks, I would love to do a commission, but that's not what I'm there for if we're talking about having your plan in place. Were you going to say something, Mike?
No, I mean, I think that's
Mhm.
very true. I mean, I think you have to strategize, you have to study, you have to understand social media, you
Mhm.
have to are you a good at socializing? Are you bad at socializing?
Mhm.
Like I said, I know when I go to a show, I often end up working harder at a show
Yes.
than at home.
Mhm. Right.
So I'm sort of I'm at the point now where I go like, maybe in the future I will do a show, maybe not.
Mhm.
I have a good thing going with doing my commissions.
Mhm.
I don't have to huff it to the airport, go through all that stuff,
Yep.
and see some raging Karen or something. Uh, it's just it's a lot more difficult now. I know from other people
Mhm.
air traveling, um, and it's very expensive to ship your stuff to the hotel.
Mhm.
I used to take a lot of books, and then I basically found that it's like, well, the people that were coming to my table already had the books,
Right.
so that wasn't really working for me, you know. And then I would take originals, but if I take the strips, nobody's really interested in the strips because most of the people are interested in the comic stuff,
Mhm.
but they don't want to pay.
Right.
So it's like you're taking your pages, they're getting fingered up, they're getting, you know, getting,
They're getting snotted on.
right. And
Yeah.
so I'm sort of at the point where I'm not sure whether I will do future stuff at conventions. I think it will just really be a show to show kind of a thing.
Mhm. 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 Um. So I wanna put a pause. I want to put a plug in here for being at a point in your career, and I'm sure if you're not a creative in this chat or watching later on the replay, you've been in spaces where you'll hear some comic creators say things like, "I ain't going to a show unless they're paying for me," right? Don't even and it's
Pay,
almost
pay me to go,
right,
uh, put me up in a hotel, and give me a table.
right. That's a stack of asks on top of
And most
everything
people
else.
are not going to get that.
Mhm. So maybe let's talk about that for a second, Mike. So to even sniff that kind of ask, or maybe to receive that from a show, that pretty have to have a pretty high profile at that point to be
Right.
even in that conversation, which takes years of going to the con, right?
Or
It
working on something famous.
oh well, there's that too.
Right.
Yeah,
Working on something.
that's a cheat code. You're
Right.
on a hot book.
Right. Well, the other thing is that you always have to factor in that comic fans are fans of certain characters and certain storylines, and then there's other stuff they really don't care about.
Mhm.
So it's like they like Batman, they like Darkhawk,
Mhm.
they don't really care about Magnus, you know. They really don't
Hello?
care about,
Hello?
they don't care about Alpha Flight. I don't even think they care so much about Shazam. You know, and I inked like 27 issues of that. It's not that you don't have people that are fans of that, but there's certain characters that have more pull. Certain, you know, it's a nostalgia thing. So when people see Frank Miller, they're thinking of all the things that he did,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Specifically Dark Knight and
Sure.
and stuff like that. So that's what they want. You try to give them something else, yeah, that's okay, but that's not what I'm really interested in.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think it's different with every artist.
Right.
If you've had a long career, me almost 40 years, there's a lot of stuff in there that the average fan would probably never care about.
Mhm. Mhm.
Maybe a very specific Mike Manley fan would
Mhm.
care about, and that's what I'm saying. Who
Mhm.
are the Mike Manley fans? Who are the Jamar Nicholas fans? Who are those people? Can
Mhm.
you identify them? Can you get along with them? Can you have a conversation with them?
Mhm.
I think that helps also quite a bit.
Mhm. Our good buddy Scott Kurtz. What up, Scott Kurtz? So sometimes you get to a show because you've been so isolated all year. It's good to be in the mix and connect again. There's also a good thing to say about recharging. I know a lot of people that kind of get through periods of their year and almost feel like they got a jump start. Like you got your battery jumped by being in that energy and leaving with maybe some new books under your arm, or maybe some new contacts, or you had a really good panel or something that can kind of carry you into the next part of your year, which is also a really great way to do it. But there's a balance. If you do too many shows, then the opposite may happen, where you might have come home with con crud, and you might come home and you're drained. Like, you know what? I've been on the road too long. I'm a mess. I can't even think. You might wind up with brain fog. From doing too much of it. So everybody's mix is a little different, and it's definitely a balance. But again, I want to make sure everybody understands. I'm not saying don't go to shows. And I also want to start moving away from comic book conventions, because I'm not just talking about comic conventions. I'm talking about traveling altogether. So in my instance, and this is kind of how we came up with this conversation for this week. A lot of my Patreon supporters know, and anybody that follows me on the social medias, I've been moving around a lot. You guys, Mike, I've been on the road a lot, and
Right.
to say that in mixed company, it sounds like I'm flexing or it's a brag, but it's a part of my makeup now. Being in the space that I am, that's part of my deal. Is I do a lot of appearances. I I have
So
beyond.
you're working with the libraries, which,
Yeah,
right, you work with your publisher.
yeah. Yeah, I have. So just in the last couple of weeks, I was in Portland 2 weeks ago. Was that 2 weeks ago? I was in Portland. Then I was in New York. And then I was in Virginia, and I feel like I'm missing something. And I was just downtown at Temple University this afternoon doing a presentation. And that's like a lot of spinning plates, right? And I think there's part of you, if you're in that space, you have to love it, or at least
But you're
be.
not drawing sketches and stuff for people.
No, no, I'm using my other talent, me running my mouth, which is all part of it still. I'm not like drawing for kids or anything like that. I'm presenting. When I was in Virginia last weekend, at the Fall for the Book Children's Book Festival in Fairfax, I had a workshop. I did a drawing workshop, and then I signed books that were sponsored by one of the local booksellers, Scrawl Books. Shout out to Scrawl Books in Reston. And then I got on the train and then got on the train and came back home. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really know to be an author illustrator in this space right now, that you can just do your book and not leave your house. I think the makeup of the new age author is a lot of appearances, a lot of Zooms, a lot of webinars, a lot of your face on something, a lot of hashtags, and a lot of travel. I don't, people don't really talk about that, because obviously and a lot of people's uh, dream catchers is to be in the space and to do all this stuff. So when I talk about it, I'm always very sensitive about making it sound like I'm bragging. It's not bragging. It's just part of the deal. But I, also know some authors who don't travel. They tell their publicists, don't, if they ask, I'm not available. I don't want it. I don't want to do it. I don't know what that does for their book sales. You know what I'm saying? But that comes back to what you were saying weeks ago, Mike, about personality. And do you have the personality for this stuff? And maybe, Mike, you talk about that for a minute. I'm going to go through the chat a little bit. Just having the personality to do these things.
Well, I think you're sort of you're a naturally gregarious person, but there's other people that are not, and so they don't flex that way.
Right.
They don't get it fixed by talking to other people. They don't like other people.
I wasn't going to say that, but I was going to say that.
I know artists who don't really like other people.
Yo, that's real rap.
I know artists that like.
There's a lot of that.
Also, I think as you get older, you become more confident. You relax. You know yourself better. You know how to handle situations better. Because comic conventions can be kind of weird. They're not normal social situations.
No, they're not. This is cool. America's Tom Zoller. Shout out to Tom Zoller. What up, TZ? Tom says, I tell upcoming artists to take speech class, Mike Manley, so they can do better with cons and editors. Wow, that's deep. But again, this is a part of it. I haven't talked about this in a while, but sometimes when you come back from being on the road and people say things as they don't know. They say things like, did you have fun? Now, generally, fun is the last thing anybody talks about after you've been in the airport for 13 hours. But, I think it's amazing that we get to do this for a living, and I think it's great. So, of course, you would think to ask somebody that, did you have fun? But it's work. But, another part of that stuff in the personality thing and what Tom's talking about is just doing better or being a better personality is a lot of kind of like an athlete would watch tape. I've said this a couple of times. Like, you should be working on yourself, every year. You may have done a talk or been on a panel, and can you go back and watch that and go, man, I said like and like 1,000 times. Or every time I was at the mic, everybody started looking at their phones. Like, are you engaging with people? Are you, making this a good experience for people? And, that might sound a little duplicitous to some people, or that sounds like you have to be on. Yes, you have to be on, right? I call it being camera ready, and I was at this thing today and the photographer came in. I was like, you know what I'm saying? Because this is what it's about. Jerry Krafts taught me a long time ago. Anytime you're in public and the cameraman shows up, you hold the book up. It's all about the product shot. You know what I'm saying? So, at the end of all this, it doesn't sound like I'm talking about drawing comics. It doesn't sound like I'm talking about cartooning. It seems like a lot of promo and marketing stuff. Yes, that's part of it also. And do you have the personality for that? I think it's a question you have to ask yourself. JRD says, friends and family never realize a show is work. Yes. So many people come home from a long 3-day show. And somebody was talking about, I think it was Patrick talking about 2-day shows. I'm starting to lean away from Friday, Saturday, Sunday shows. That Friday hurts, Mike.
And usually not much happens on the Friday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it usually starts late. So like a show may start at 1:00 p.m. on a Friday and go late. Like it might get out at 8:00 at night. And then, then you're back in it. And then also, I guess, to this about cons again, also consider the length of a show. San Diego is notorious, and a lot of people don't know this. Not notorious JRD. It's notorious for being longer than people think. There's still preview night, and you never really hear about preview night in mixed company. Preview night is Wednesday night, right? Where that's kind of
just basically the show.
right. It's as big as the show is now. It used to be like a more low key VIP. You can kind of have a conversation and make some really good connections and deals with the audience before Gen Pop shows up on Thursday. So consider you have to get out of your state and get on a plane and be there Tuesday, right? If it starts Wednesday, you got to be there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And if you can get out of there on Sunday and get in a plane the same day, a lot of people go home on Monday. That's a lot of days in a hotel paying like premium rates. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So I'm just saying, like, just consider what you're getting yourself into. TZ says San Diego's still going on right now. Right. And so another thing about the Road Warrior stuff is we talked about comic book conventions. I talked a little bit about other things like book festivals, book fairs in the world I'm in. There's conferences. I'm doing keynotes now, Mike. I have a keynote next month in Santa Fe, New Mexico. There's also, other things that maybe won't be as much pressure if you're known in your area as the comic book guy or the cartoonist or the graphic novelist. There's a lot of really fantastic things that happen at local libraries. There may be shows put on by your local comic book store. There's things that aren't as high pressure as getting in a plane and going to France.
Right.
You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be an all or nothing, like like that with everything you do. But maybe think of your calendar year, and I would always implore people to zoom out and look at their year ahead of them. Go through. There's a couple of resources online that plug every comic book convention in the United States. And there's major ones and there's minor ones and there's super, super tiny ones. And maybe put them on a Google Calendar and just kind of look at it and see how that maps out. I've talked to some younger cartoonists who are on that grind right now. They're on that travel grind. Some of them are like, yo, I do 20 shows a year. Yo, I do 15 shows a year. Yo, I'm going to be here next week. Almost like the carnival lifestyle. I'm on it. Boom, 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 boom. They have a purpose for it, and there's a reason they wanted to up their number of shows from maybe last year to this year because they're trying to get something. But that's all planning. It goes back to planning. And there's also been times that I've been at a show, and this is really funny. I've talked about this before, Mike, where a young person will come up to me, or maybe they're not so young sometimes. And they go like, yo, I'm an artist. Cool. Let me see your work. See, what had happened was, you didn't bring your stuff to the con? What do you mean? Oh, no, man. My girl, like, I don't want to hear your stories. You're not ready. So I would, sometimes I give those guys some homework. I said, listen, I don't know you. I may never see you again, but consider this was an opportunity. Maybe there's still a couple of days left in the show, but usually those kids say they're only there for the day, right? That's another thing. Think about the next time this show's in town. What are you going to have ready? Are you going to have a business card? And people still use business cards. Are you going to have samples of your work? Are you going to have something that leave with people? Do you have a list of questions you want to ask me? Because you don't even know what to ask me right now. Like you're wasting an opportunity to, further your thing. The first time I went to San Diego, Mike, it was recon. I didn't bring anything with me. I didn't have a table. I got on a plane and went there, and I just kind of figured out how it all worked. Oh, Keith Knight and those guys are over there in Artist Alley. How does Artist Alley work? Oh, you need to be like on a waiting list, but it's free. But all these people have been sitting on spots like it's a New York apartment for years.
Right.
That's how that works. Okay. So what about these over here? Oh, that's small press. But what about those over there? Oh, that's a 10 by 10 pipe and drape. You know what I mean? How much do those cost? I'm doing the homework. You know, I'm not collecting action figures. I'm trying to figure out how this works. So next year when I go back, I have a plan. Hey, what up, Steve? Steve is calling from the ether. Stone Cold Steve Conley says indie creators can do much better at smaller, cheaper cons. That is super true. You're not going to compete with Marvel and Image and the people that have a giant monolith behind you. So, you know, get in where you fit in. So another thing about that, hold on. Steve says, I'm about to do a 4-day show starting tomorrow and I'm already exhausted. Seems like it's turning more into a con about cons than pros. So I think all of this stuff is manageable. And obviously, you can only do what you can do, right? If you can't afford to do all this stuff, you're not going to do it, right? And then maybe you figure out you do like one more thing every year and you keep building up your contacts and you go a little further every year. But some other things to consider, especially if you're deciding you want to be a traveler, can you get there in a day? Right? Can you drive there versus some other mode of transportation? Your loadout is a lot different if you can pack up your SUV and drive like a state over to a thing. That's not so bad, right?
Yeah.
If you hustle, you might even go home and come back the next day. I have a couple of buddies that used to do that at New York, Mike. They were Philly cats, and they would drive to New York, set up, and then drive home and go to bed, and then get up and drive back
Oh,
to New York. Yo, that's a backbreaker. I couldn't do it, but people do stuff like that. You know, can you get to it in a day if you're trying to like watch your costs? I'm too old to be sleeping in somebody's bathtub. I just, I mean, that's just not me. But double up with some buddies. I would say short of packing a bunch of kids into a hotel room, we're not teenagers anymore. But you might have somebody from your town that's going the same way. Figure out a way you can split costs. Um, Also, when you can pack your car full of stuff and drive it, is a big difference of how your exhibition table is going to look versus you trying to figure out what you're bringing on an airplane. And Tom Zoller already put some really good tips, pause, into the chat about shipping. Like, don't ever ship to your hotel because they have rates if they'll even accept it. I know when I was in Portland, they had rates at the hotel. It's like $30 a day versus some sort of cubic weight or size of how big these packages are, and the clock is ticking down and the numbers going up. So figure out how you're going to get this stuff there. And then, Mike, we all know about this. Also have a plan to get it home, right? Like on Sunday at the end of a con, you see so much stuff in the trash, like people's whole like display things are just like, I just got to leave it. I just gotta go to trash. I
I
can't
know
take it
people that
home.
would do stuff like when they wanted monitors, they would come in early, go to Staples, get a monitor, use it for the show, and then return it.
Hey, man, it's like whatever you have to do. But it kind of sounds like one of the big things here is making plans, right? P says cons 100% great to build your brand with fans. While they love Batman, most are supporting you, not the character. That could be your ideal goal of the con. Fan loyalty is amazing. Steve Conley will tell you, and I think Tom is the same way. Every time you're at a show, you have your mailing list clipboard there. I have a new thing on my newest Leon banner. I have a QR code. And I love to say this, you guys could steal this. Boot my banner because I don't carry cards anymore. It's kind of like not worth making anymore because you give it to somebody. How many times do you give somebody a card and then you see it on the floor like 3 feet away? People can't hold that. And young people just take pictures of stuff anyway. So I just say, hey, they go, yo, you got a card? Like, you can just boot my banner and my whole link tree is there. That's just thinking ahead a little bit and you solve that problem of mailing lists and everything. My QR code goes to my website where there's a mailing list and you can sign up for that. So yeah, I mean, there's that, and also if you also have to like just to kind of give a shout out to family if you have families, you have to figure that out with the people you live with, because there's going to be a point, a tipping point where your family is kind of like, yo, you're never here on the weekends. What's going on with that? Oh, I got this thing, and I got to go to Nashville. Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? So that's something else you have to figure out.
Yeah, I know guys who did 3 shows a month.
Yeah, yeah, you're missing birthdays, and I hate for somebody to like break up their marriage because you really wanted to do a comic book convention. Yo, real rap, I know a lot of people. You hear stories on the show floor. I've seen like guys show up all sweaty. I'm like, yo, why are you sweating? Oh, it's my wife's birthday, but I had to come to the show. You did? Oh, she doesn't know I'm here. I told her I'd be right back. You're at the comic book convention? Really? You know what I'm saying? It's like make good choices, y'all. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like in that degree, is what you're doing worth it at this moment in your life?
Right.
I don't want to say to anybody ever that you can't do it. You could do whatever you set your mind to. But sometimes that comes up against reality. I've been invited to shows. I was invited to a show in Seattle. It was Emerald City a couple of years ago. I was on the guest list, the whole thing. At that point, I could not do it, and I had to eat crow and tell the people, "I'm sorry, man. I can't come. I can't do it this year." All right, and then my picture on the website turned gray like I died. Canceled. You know what I'm saying? And then, sometimes you got to build that relationship up again, but you can only do what you can do. You know what I mean? So don't get yourself into hot water with your family because you really got to go do that show, you know? Um, and also, I guess we could talk about a little bit of the mix here, the mix. A couple of people in the chat had mentioned doing smaller shows. I'm a big fan of that. And all this stuff is really riding off of relationships. Mike knows. Thanks for calling me gregarious, but being friendly is a part of it. But I'm a networker too. You know what I mean? And um, I try to use my powers for good, not evil. But me being in the business for 25 years and having good relationships with a lot of people makes opportunities. I don't want to say it's who you know. I think that's not necessarily a truth because that makes it sound like I just need to know people and then things happen. That's not how that works. Because you can know a lot of people and be a total douchebag, and everybody hates that guy when he comes down the hall. I try not to be that person, but being around, maybe starting in the mailroom and working your way up, unlock some things. So you kind of have to put that time in. The face time is important. When I decided I was going to go to San Diego my first time, along with that recon thing, I thought to myself, I need to be at this show so people know that I'm serious. That's what I told myself, and this is like 2000. You know what I'm saying? Um, did that work? Possibly. I'm here now, but what would have happened if I didn't go? I think you'd have to replace that with something else. So I want to always be careful about saying you have to go to something because it's happening. I don't necessarily believe that, but also I think the more you're at a thing and people see you in certain circles or in certain places and certain conversations, like it has to help your brand. um, I would love. Oh yeah. So what up, Christopher? Christopher says there's a thing called the dot card. I've seen those. Much easier to use than actual business cards. Have you seen these, Mike? They're
No.
kind of like it's almost like a credit card, and I think you can just like boop, like you can just like hold it up to somebody's phone, and all of your contacts pop on it. Kind of reminds me when I had a Palm Pilot, and there was a thing they called bumping. This sounds really, really salacious right now. If somebody else had a Palm Pilot, you could like make them touch, and their information would go over to yours. But yeah, I mean, whatever works. I would love to take some questions about this. I feel like we're just scratching the surface of a conversation. or maybe even some of the creatives in the chat can share some of their mixes. And Mike knows I've been saying the same phrase for years. What's in your mix? I think almost like a portfolio, it needs to be diverse, and you have to have a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of make good with the wife part of your calendar. All that stuff has to kind of add up to 100% of what you're doing every year. So, let's hear what's going on in the chat. Mike, you have anything to add to any of that?
No, I think you. You've said it all and said it well.
I mean, there's more. Some other parts of this is when you're traveling, and we touched on this a little bit when we had our con preparation episode. Is to try to find a really good way to travel. I know some people don't travel well. If you've ever heard that, it's like, some people are a mess. They got to take anxiety pills. They got the little patch behind their ear. You know what I mean? They're just they're just a mess, and it's like they're worse when they get there. If you feel like you're not a good traveler, maybe you shouldn't travel. I know some people in my life who don't take airplanes. That's just it. I don't take planes. I ain't flying in no plane, Hannibal. You know what I mean? It ain't happening. Then maybe you're not going to San Diego if you live in Maine or something like that. Unless you want to make a 2 weeks out of it and catch the Amtrak across country, that's probably beautiful. But if that doesn't work for you, then I don't think you should make yourself sick to be at something. So if you can find a way to do it, even if you turn it into a micro vacation. Hey, let's try this. Hey, I really want to go to San Diego and I'm going to exhibit, but I'm going to take 2 weeks and I'm going to drive and stop off and see some sights and go see my sister and then maybe go to the Grand Canyon and then maybe, you know what I'm saying? You can make an adventure out of that. And, that's a really great thing too. But you got to have to do what works for you. So anyway, getting back to the diverse portfolio thing is maybe you do some library talks. Maybe you go to your local library and say, hey, I'm a cartoonist. Can I do some after school workshops with the kids? Oh, sure. That sounds fantastic. We love that. And you start there, right? Maybe you do a couple of those. Maybe you do some community talks. Do something at the comic book shop. If you don't have a book out, maybe they'll tell you we can't. If you don't have a product, like we can't really see you being here yet. Then figure something else out. And also, depending on your subject matter, I've said this for a million years. If you're doing a very genre specific project or comic book, take it to where you think people would actually want it. It doesn't always have to be a comic book store. It doesn't always have to be the comic book convention. If you're doing a comic book about a guy who drinks coffee and he turns into a superhero, go to a coffee shop. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like some of this just sounds like common sense, but it's really uncommon because people usually don't think. They think very linearly that, oh, I do a comic book. This square peg has to fit into this hole. There's other ways to find your audience. I know some people in the chat who are really fantastic. Okay, about standing out on the corner and selling books. You know what I mean? Hey, I'm going to open my trunk. Yo, you guys like comics? That's so out of the norm. You know what I mean? People are like, yo, this is hot. Yeah, here you go. We'll take some flicks for the gram.
You're like the McGruff of comics.
You close the duffel and you're out. So yeah. All right. I'm going to do one more run through the chat, and I think I'm going to maybe end this a little early, you guys, just for respect of Mike, and I want him to get some rest. So James says, what about traveling for the sake of seeing or experiencing something new? What about that? Sometimes in those spaces, it's hard to sell that to your family. If you're like, honey, I want to go to Seattle for what? I just want to, you know what I mean? You might have to make that work inside the makeup of your relationships. or maybe you make it a family trip. One of the coolest things about Baltimore for the longest time is a lot of creators would bring their families to Baltimore because it was a cool area, right? You know what? I got to sit at this table all day, but my wife and the kids will go to the aquarium, or they'll go, up and down the inner harbor and go check out some stuff. That's a good way to kind of, butter your bread and still get what you need too. JRD says, maybe next time, hopefully when I'm not out of town, week after the next, the topic could be creating the convention kit. That's something we could talk about. I feel like we kind of touched on that earlier, but we can bring that back up. All right. I'm looking through the chat and I'm not seeing a lot of questions. But here, I'll read this real quick and then we'll get out of here. My man Steven, what up, Steven? Steven's a fantastic guy. Good to see him in Baltimore. I didn't see you at Baltimore last year. Steven says, as a comic fan, I make sure I go to the conventions that are within reason, or I have friends and family that live near it, and so no cost for being at a show. Haha! I have done Philly, Baltimore, and Heroes without paying for room and board. Haha! That way I spend my money on the comic creators, not the hotel. I like that.
Right.
Yeah, so it's just work smarter, not harder. You know what I'm saying? So, all right, Mike, you got the call. JRD says, Mike, get rest. We're gonna put a plug in this tonight. Hopefully by next episode, Mike will be feeling a lot better. Everybody say happy birthday to Monsignor Mike Manley.
Well, thank you.
He's got a big birthday coming up. Say happy birthday in the chat. We'll give him some birthday greetings while we get those Kirby hands ready. So I'll do a couple of other plugs real quick. Tomorrow is the on week for Coffee Break with JN. Tune back in here, Bat fans. Tomorrow at 9 p.m. EST, I will be here with Coffee Break with JN. If you're a skipper, you know who you are. If you love pencil to pencil, but you don't seem to show up for Coffee Break, correct your actions, fix your face. I want to see you in the place tomorrow night. Oh, look at that, Mike. Look at all the love.
Thank you, everybody.
Isn't that sweet? Thank you. You guys are great. So I want to give a shout out to Stone Cold Steve Conley. Go out into that night, that dark night, and make good things. Steve, have fun storming the castle. And we'll see Steve next week. Hey, Shelly says, happy birthday, Mike. Hope you feel better. That's the best present there is. Oh, sweet.
Yes.
All right. So Mike is a great case study for this. Guys, we're in the end game. So I would be remiss if I did not tell you when you leave here to make sure you wash those Kirby hands. Put those hands up. Stretch. Good night, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow on Coffee Break.
See you next week.
Get some rest. Go to sleep.